cover a few more little advanced things with the viewport and so on. The first one is selecting. So at the moment with you guys, by default on your Blender, to deselect you have to press A, and A is like a toggle. It'll select. Let's see if I just make a few of these. So if I have a few selected, so I press A, it'll deselect, A again, it'll select all, and then it'll just toggle between selecting all and deselecting all. But that kind of, I find it very annoying to kind of have to reach up and press a button just to deselect. So in programs like 3D Max and Maya, usually what you do is you just click anywhere in an empty space and that will deselect. But what I've set up here, it's to double click. So if we have an object there and we double click here, I'll deselect the object. I find this much better. So we're going to set up this now with your Blender, just to make things a little more comfortable and so on. So to do this, we need to go into our preferences. So we go File, User Preferences, and then we'll go to Input, which is the third block over. And in here it's going to be just this area here is where we can make adjustments and change shortcuts and stuff like that. So I think the very first one will be, let me see, window. Yeah, so it's the 3D view we're looking for, because that's where we're going to make the change. So 3D view is just down a few there. So we click on 3D view, and let me see now. We will 3D view global object mode. Yeah, so it's object mode that we're going to go for. So we will have to set up this shortcut with each kind of mode. So for example, right now I'm in object mode where I select objects, move them around, so I can deselect anywhere and get rid of that. Then when I switch to edit mode, if you haven't set up customization for this, again it won't work, so I can also double click out here and deselect things. So we just go back to object mode now, open up preferences. Right, so under 3D view object mode, what we're looking for is the deselect all. Now you'll see there's actually two of them here. It's probably the same on yours because there's two different ways to deselect. So over here on the left we see the actual name and what it does, and we have a little tick to say that it's switched on. And then over on the right we have keyboard and then a letter. So we're not going to delete this, we're going to leave it like that. I'm not going to adjust it, we're just going to make a brand new shortcut by ourselves. So we want to actually get in here and kind of find a little bit of code that makes this shortcut work. So I'm going to click the little white arrow to the very left, and that'll open up this little block here, and this gives us all the information and so on. So object select all. So this is what we want. We just want to copy out this little bit of code here. So you can just click on that, or you can click and drag and select that whole thing. And when you've done that, you can press Control-C to copy. So Control-C, and now we've copied that out of there. So now we're going to close this again. And now we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we've got Add New. So this is where we add our new shortcut. Now you can see I've already got mine up here set up, but we'll just start again. So we click Add New, and we get a new one called None, and we get keyboard and A. So click the little white arrow to open this up. So now this is a completely empty shortcut. We haven't added anything in here. So in here on none, we will Control V to paste in the shortcut that we copied. And once you've done that, you'll get the name pop up. It'll change to deselect all. So over here on where it says keyboard, so now clicking this, we get a load of different options for what we want to set the shortcut to. We can set it to mouse, NDOF, that's my 3D mouse here. I forget what that stands for, but so on. But we're just going to put it to mouse. And then over here on the right, this is going to be the actual button that makes the shortcut work. So at the moment it's left mouse. Now I didn't get mine to work with left mouse, so I switched it to double click the left mouse. So oh yeah, so we leave that on left mouse. You can just click on that and then it'll ask you to press a button, so you could right click or left click or whatever. I'm going to put this on left click, which is because I've changed my customizations to left click. So we've got mouse, left mouse, and just below that now we have some more options for the actual shortcut itself. So if we click on the left there, we can also choose a load of different buttons on the mouse, but I'm going to leave that there. And then on the right we have press, and we open that up and we've got double click, click, release, press, and any. So we could just go up to double click and set that there, and I think that is, oh yeah, we have one more thing to change. Down below that in action, this is where we actually tell it whether we could have a toggle in or invert and so on, but we just want to deselect. And I think now as I've done that, because I already had one, it just got rid of that and just threw this one in here. So just to go over that again, we pasted our little bit of code in there. We chose the mouse and the left mouse, so mouse, left mouse, and then below that in the option we have left and double click. So when you've got all that set up, remember to always come down to the bottom and click Save User Settings. And with that we could just minimize our preferences, or you can close it out, whatever, if you like. But now when you're in object mode and you're in here, you should be able to click on a box, select it, and then double click in an empty space, and that should deselect. I'll just leave that open so you just can keep an eye on that. Do you know what frame they're rendering to? I think it was up on the blog. We're on frame 2050, Toy Story 4. Is anyone stuck on that, or is that working for everyone? You're able to deselect, yeah? All good? Yep. Yep. Happy enough? Okay, so like that's a much handier way now for deselecting. Tapping the keyboard is just very annoying, and in other programs it's always, you just kind of click anywhere that's empty and that'll work. So we'll do the same now for edit mode, and then we'll leave it at that for setting that up. And if we're working in more modes, we can set it up for them as well. So we can just close that little deselect all there. So again, you can come in here if there's any kind of button combinations that are annoying you, or something you think might be a little better. You can come in here and customize every single aspect of Blender. to do whatever you want. So that was object mode in the 3D view. So I'm just going to click the little arrow and close that. And we are now looking for mesh. Yeah, so right below object mode, mesh. So we haven't, we might discuss a little bit of this today, but so we're in object mode at the moment, and then we switch to edit mode, and this is where we make adjustments to single objects by themselves. So we can like grab points on them and so on. But at the moment, again in yours, if you you can select, and if you double click out there in an empty space, the object, the components will still remain selected, which is very annoying. So we're going to set up the exact same customization now for edit mode. So I'll open up user preferences again, and so we've got mesh. So we want to scroll down now. The little bit of code that we copied won't work for this, so we need to copy the new bit of code specifically for deselecting mesh. So under mesh, we want to scroll down and find deselect all again. So you'll find there's two of them there. It doesn't really matter which one you click on. So we'll open that up and we'll see we have a little bit of code here, mesh.select all. In the last one it might have been object.select all, something like that. So click on that, Control C to copy it, close that down, and now we'll scroll all the way down again and we'll add new, and we get none, keyboard A. So we'll open this up and make some adjustments to it. We'll paste in our mesh select all code, and as soon as we do that, we'll see some changes. So we want to set this up exactly the same as we did last time. So in keyboard, switch that to mouse. Left mouse is fine, and below that we have left, that's correct, and then press, we'll switch that to double click. And the last thing then is action, we want to switch that to deselect. So if I left that at select, go to, oh yeah, no, I have one already set up. So yeah, you can, if you make a mistake with it, you'll get some funny results, like maybe you'll select an object and then it'll start deselecting and selecting and deselecting and kind of go crazy. So yeah, left, double click and deselect. So that is the little block of code there. Remember, again, save your user settings on your way out and just test that out. So remember, we can switch modes down here at the bottom, object mode, edit mode. So in edit mode now, you should be able to select the little dots in the corner. Mine are green, but yours, I'm not, what color are they on yours? Are they just gray or? And I set up the colors on this. Actually, we might do that today as well, because I kind of prefer them. If you guys are in edit mode and you're looking at a box or something there, are there colors around the edges of it, or is it just kind of gray? Gray, yeah. If you so just select, say, this box here. You can now switch into I think this might be different than the other one. plus symbol down there, so you can just click on that, or you can click and drag. Yeah, that pops that back up. So what I've done here, I switched down the bottom window there. So if you want to just click this little, that little block and switch that to a timeline. Now it looks kind of. So I was just looking at one there. What happened was the little bar down here at the bottom, you can actually grab that, and if you scroll down, you'll crush it down and it's gone. But you've got this little plus symbol here to bring that back up. Just something to keep in mind. You also have those little plus symbols over here as well, and I think here as well. Those are just for pulling out the little side panels on in the viewport, and this one here is for getting rid of this the bar that's down here. So yeah, I'll just drag that up. So is everyone able to, while you're in edit mode, double click and you're able to deselect the little parts there? Happy enough? Yep. So yeah, that's just making things handier. Remember to save your preferences always in that menu, in the user preferences. Alright, so I'm just going to do a reset. So I've just reset the scene there. I've got my camera, cube, and light source there. So over here on the left, T for toolbox. I just want to show you a few more little tabs on this. So down the side here, we've got all these different tabs. This is where a lot of add-ons will show up when you add them to Blender and stuff like that. So at the very top we have tools, so that's basically got our transformations and so on, but I've already shown you how to move the objects with the gizmos, and also with the shortcuts. G for move, and then you can just slide your mouse around or press X, Y, or Z. But you can also access that information up here, but I never ever use this, because when you come up here and click on it, let's say I want to translate, so I come up here and click on translate. As soon as I do that, it is now activated translate, but my mouse is up here in the top left, so I just find it to be a very weird kind of, as you're kind of moving it around, it's just a little bit odd. And remember, while we're in the middle of a transformation, we can, oh, I lost my object altogether, it just disappeared somewhere. So we can right click to cancel that. So yeah, tools has a few different things there. So that's transform. So I'm just going to click on transform there just to close out that little header up there. Below that we have edit. So this is where we can make a few minor edits to the object. So the very first one is duplicate, and this is something that we're going to use a lot, especially for the Minecraft blocks, because if you want more than one block, you'll need to make a copy of it. So again, if you click up here, duplicate, when you start to move your mouse, you'll get the same thing. Your mouse is kind of over there, but you do get a new object. I'm just going to cancel that and slide that over. So the way that I would always do duplication is with the shortcut, which is Shift D, and as soon as you do that, you get a new object a new copy of that object, and it's also in switched straight into move mode. So it kind of does two things. It duplicates the object and switches on move. So once we've done that, we can just slide our object there. So again, Shift D, and we're making another copy. So that's duplicate. Below that is duplicate linked. This is slightly more advanced. Basically what it means is, let's say we have, actually I'll open up the Minecraft blocks rig just for the giggles. Okay, so I'm just going to grab like dirt block and just move it over here. So this file, remember, has snapping switched on when we move our object around. That's the little magnet down here in the bottom of the 3D view. If we switch that off, now we're just getting the smooth movement. So the way I would normally always duplicate, I would always do it in an orthographic view, not in 3D view. So I would press 1 or 3 or 7 just to get an accurate duplication. So I press Shift D, and now I'm getting my new object. And like the move and rotate and so on, we can hold Shift to get the super smooth movement, or we can hold Control to switch on our snapping. So like I'd normally never really have the magnet switched on down here just to leave snapping on all the time. I'd usually, if I switch off snapping there and I'm making a movement and now I want it to actually snap to these grids, I would hold Control, and now you can see it's snapping perfectly to those. So I'm just going to middle mouse and rotate just to get out of that view. So yeah, I'll just switch on snapping now just to keep it all nice and clean. So we could also Shift D, and as soon as, now with snapping on, you'll see as you make your new one, it's kind of cool, it'll snap straight into place. So I Shift D and I move that block there, and it's all in line and so on. Right, so that's kind of duplicating an object, the real simple way of doing it. So there's also another little thing we can do in Blender. It's called, what is it called? Redo the last action. So it's a way to repeat any kind of action we've just done in Blender. So this is accessible here in the, let me just mark this. So it's down here in this corner of the toolbox. And this is going to change all the time depending on what we do. So let me see, I'll actually just reset scene just so you can kind of more clearly see it. So when I open up default scene, it's just down here in the bottom left of the toolbox. I'm just going to slide this up. So the toolbox has two parts to it, and at the moment it just says operator and there's nothing really in there. So I'll come in here and I'll move my box, just slide it along the Y or whatever, and as soon as I let go, you'll see this box is now filled up with a whole load of different things. So I'm actually just going to slide this out just a little more so you can see it clearer. So basically what it's given us is the information about what we just done. So we can see here I translated, and I translated 0 in X, and then in Y I moved it 4.9998 whatever, and in Z I moved it 0. So this is a way to make adjustments to something that we've done. So say I moved that box there and I actually didn't want it, I wanted it to be 3 or whatever, so I could come in here and correct that. I can make that 3. So now that's sort of that, and we can make any kind of adjustments we want. There's a whole load of stuff there, but we don't need to worry about that. Where this comes in very handy is for duplicating objects. So I'll fly back to my blocks again, and I'll move this down here. Right, so we have a block there. So I'm going to hop into an orthographic view, doesn't really matter which one. So with my object selected, I'm going to press Shift D and then slide my block. Let's just slide it right up against it. And now with that done, and without pressing anything else, if we were to redo the last action we just done, we should get another duplication of that object. So rather than going into that menu to mess around with it, the shortcut for this is Shift R. When you press that, if I press Shift R, now what happens is it repeats the exact same thing I just done, which means it duplicates another object and moves it across in one unit. So you can press Shift R as many times as you want, and it should duplicate an object each time. So that's a good way to test how your computer runs. If you just start just sit there and just tap 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 and just keep going until your system breaks. In fact, you can actually hold it. Now, I'm not telling you to do this, but you can hold Shift and hold R, and it'll just go. So you can see up here in the top right, you can see the amount of faces and triangles up in the info editor. So I've got 8,624 vertices. Press and hold. So that's starting to build up. I don't know why I'm doing this. 10,000 vertices. Anyway, yeah. So now we've got a whole pile of blocks. So I really don't know why I did that. I'm just gonna, yeah. So I'm gonna restart that again. So we could use this method to very quickly make like a floor or whatever. So I'll do that now. Right, you'll notice actually this block right here, it's not in line with my grid. Now this isn't super important, but just for the sake of keeping things clean, it'd be nice if it was lined up with that. So in the 3D view, in the perspective view here, the grid never changes. It's always going to stay at that size. But if we hop into an orthographic view, let's say 1, 3, or 7, whichever, I'm just going to press 1 to go into a front view. So now you see the blocks there. As I start to zoom in, the closer you get, now you start to get some smaller grid points. And that means that if we now move this object in this view, it's going to snap to those smaller grid points. So this is a handy way to quickly line it up with the bigger blocks. As I zoom out now, you'll see it's perfectly lined up now with those blocks. So if I was to zoom in even further again, you get even tinier grid points, and that kind of goes on. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so now I have that object lined up. I can just slide this around the view and it's perfectly in line. So to make a quick kind of floor, I'll select that object. Again, I'll hop into an orthographic view just to keep things nice and straight and perfect. So I'll press Shift D, or you could go up to the edit mode and click duplicate. Shift D, and then I'll slide my mouse over, and when I'm happy with where it is, just left click. Now it's gone into place. So I'm just going to rotate out of that view so I can clearly see what's going on. So without pressing any other buttons or whatever, if we press Shift R, we should get a new object. So I'm just going to copy this across the grid. That'll do. So now I have one line. So now we want to select all these objects. So it would be a very slow way to come in here, hold Shift to select. I showed you that last week, didn't I? Selecting multiple objects. Did I? Anyone recall? Just to quickly, you click on an object to select it, but if you hold Shift, now you're adding to the selection. So you can just click and add to that. And while you're holding that, if you click on an already selected object, you'll first make it, it'll kind of highlight in a different color, which means it's the active object. And if you click on it again, it'll get rid of it. But that, again, would be a very slow way of going about it. So we have what's called a border select, or it's called box select. But basically, it's going to create a little box where you can make it bigger and smaller to select all your objects. So the shortcut for that, now all these shortcuts I mentioned later on, if you're checking out the video, you should definitely jot them down somewhere. Just even stick them, like I keep them stuck on these, and just stick them all around the place. They'll eventually stick in your head. I know it's a lot to kind of take on all at once, but yeah. So the shortcut for box selecting is B. So with our mouse in 3D viewport, press B, and now we get this kind of a crosshair system here. So this is just giving us a choice, where do we want to start the box select. So just click once anywhere. Nope. Click and drag. So I just clicked once there and it deselected. It just got rid of it. So press B and then click and drag. And as we do that, we get a little box, little crosshair box. So we can drag that over whatever objects we want. And then let go. And now we see we have a load of objects selected. Now I selected the light in the background there. There's a sunlight. And there's also a light here. And the beam of it just got into my selection there. But I also selected all those blocks as well. So then if we were to hit G for move, now we've got all those selected. So yeah, so B is for box select. So now let's say I want to deselect those two lights that I just selected by mistake. So again, we could press B for box select. That brings up the crosshair again, but this time, rather than left clicking, we'll middle mouse button, click the middle mouse button down, and now drag. And this is going to create a box that will deselect anything that's inside it. So middle mouse button, click down, click and drag that, and let go, and anything inside the box is now going to be deselected. So I'll press B, click down the middle mouse button, drag it over this kind of line here, that light that's selected, let go, and now I have all those, just the boxes selected for now. So with all those selected, now we could duplicate the entire selection here. So again, I'm going to, I could just do it here. Because snapping is switched on, I should be able to just do a duplication here, and it should line up okay. So with all those selected, press Shift D, and now slide our mouse, and we'll get, that should pop forward for you. And then we just click again to drop our object down there. And without doing anything, we should be able to press Shift R and start to make a whole load of objects in that direction. So we're getting a bit of a floor going there. And every object now can be selected and messed around with and so on. There's also another type of select. This is kind of like a paint select. I rarely use this, but I suppose I'll tell you about it. So the shortcut for this is C. When you press this, you'll get this little sphere, circle. And basically now you can just left click and just kind of paint or just move it around, and anything that gets in the way of that gets selected. So that could work out handy in some case. Yeah. Yeah. I would have probably just selected the middle one and then okay. Yeah, so I think that's called the lasso tool, or no, it's not. That's just the paintbrush tool. There's another one, but we'll leave it at that for now, because that's enough. Now I think with this, yeah. So again, if we activate that tool by pressing C, last time we left clicked to select, but if we middle mouse button, we're now deselecting. So you can kind of just paint off what objects you don't want, what objects you do want. Yeah. Right. Let's see. So I also want to talk about the 3D cursor now. This is another type of snapping. So there's two different types of snapping in Blender. There's this one that we switch on down here, the magnet. So yeah, I call this kind of magnet snapping. So it's basically like it starts to make points magnetic. If we start to move it, it'll hop across, hop across, hop across, and so on. And we can set this to snap onto different things, but for now we're just going to leave it at the grid. So yeah, we've got that snapping. So I'm just going to switch that, leave it on for now. The other one involves this little guy here, which has probably been driving some of you a little bit crazy. This is called the 3D cursor. So you've probably noticed as you're kind of clicking around, if you right click, this little guy sometimes by mistake will just pop up in your face and will annoy your face, and you're probably wondering why is that there. This is a great little Yorkine. So it's got a few different benefits. So the first one is when you create new objects, they're always going to appear where your 3D cursor is. And to bring in new objects and so on, we can do that in the toolbox. So if you've closed that, T for toolbox, and I'll just slide this out just to make a bit more space. And it's the second tab down. You'll see we have add primitive, curve, lamp, so on. Remember, you can always slide your mouse around on the toolbox. So a primitive object, it just means a basic object. It's just a simple kind of a shape, something to help you start your modeling with, or just to stand in place for now. So we'll just keep an eye. The 3D cursor is there, and we can click that wherever. So if I bring in the very top one there is a plane. It's not an aeroplane, it just means a flat plane. So we bring that in and we've basically got a polygon here. It's just a flat four-sided shape. But you'll see that came in right where my 3D cursor was. So I'm just going to click it here. So, and back up to my add primitive. We can add a cube. We can add a circle. We can add all kinds of different things. Cylinder. Cone. And as we're bringing in these objects, down in our, let's see, down in our last action window, just down here on the left at the bottom, as we bring in an object, before we press anything else, we can make some adjustments to it. So we could change like the radius of the bottom of the cone, radius of the top of the cone, and the depth of it. So that's a little option that pops up every time we bring in a new object. But as I said before, this window here only holds your last action, the last thing you've done. So if I now come up here and move the cone, as soon as I do that, this changes here, and we've lost the chance to make some adjustments to that. Just delete it. So just going down through mesh, we also have monkey, just a monkey head. So this is kind of just a basic object, very low poly monkey head. It's in most 3D programs they have a teapot as a default object. It's something that you can just bring into your viewport and you can test materials out on because it's got curves and so on. So every 3D program has a very basic model that comes with it, and it's usually always a teapot, but Blender have gone for a monkey head. Her name is Suzanne, and she's a friendly monkey, and yeah, it's just a little monkey head. There you go. Not much more to say about it. Yeah, so these are all mesh objects we can add, and we can add lights and text and speakers, cameras, and so on. But I'm going to focus now on the 3D cursor. So we can click this around anywhere, and it'll hop around, but it's not super accurate right there. So let's say we wanted to be a little bit more accurate with it. So let's say we want to move a block just to sit it directly on top of a block here. So what is it? Shift. Yeah. So another shortcut for you is shortcut to control the 3D cursor is Shift S. So that's 3 now that we've had with Shift. So we've had Shift D for duplicating, Shift R for repeating the last action. So D for duplicate, R for repeat, and now we have S for the 3D cursor snap. So I'm just going to select, so I have this object selected here now. So I want to use this, I want to move my 3D cursor to the exact center of this object here. So I'll select the object, press Shift S, and that brings up our snap menu. So I call the last snapping a kind of a magnetic snapping. I call this one a kind of a teleporting snapping. So we don't actually move an object around, it doesn't snap. We choose a point for it to be, and then it's just going to appear there when we complete the action. So when we press Shift S, we get a lot of different options here. We have selection to grid, selection to cursor offset. So if I was to, I'm just going to skip the top one, selection to grid, because it's already on the grid. And you don't need to follow along with this now, because I'm just going to randomly show you a few different things. So if I press selection to cursor, what it just done was it took my block and it threw it down and teleported it to where my 3D cursor was. But that's not what we wanted. We wanted it the other way around. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and that'll undo. So I press Shift S again to bring up the snap menu. So the first three we have there will move our selection to the 3D cursor, but below that is the options for moving our cursor to the object. So we have cursor to selected, and that's pretty much the one we want. So if I click cursor to selected, now you see our 3D cursor has shot up into the where the block is. If I just switch, we see now, yeah, that's directly in the center of that object. So now we have our cursor there. Now we could go and choose the block that we want to move to this location. So it doesn't really matter, I suppose. I'll just grab a block of wood here. Oak. Right, so I've selected that object. So now again we want to open up our teleport snap, Shift S, and this time we want to move the selection to where the cursor is. So selection to cursor, and now we have our block there. So that is perfectly in line with the block. So now we can just move it up one, and now we've got that object perfectly set up there. So we could do that again. I'll just repeat that now again. So it's a two-stage process. First of all, you move your 3D cursor to where you want stuff to happen, and then you move the stuff to the 3D cursor. So one more time, I'll select this object, press Shift S, and I'm going to move my cursor to selected, so it's up there. So now I could, let me see, bring in, doesn't really matter, but I'll just bring in a glass block. So select that, press Shift S, selection to cursor. Now that's perfectly lined up that object, and now I can just move it up one or whatever. You notice at the moment the glass is just it's just a white kind of a texture. We'll make that transparent in a later class when we're working with materials. So that's Shift S is an important one. You're always going to be moving your cursor around. It's extremely handy. Another way to move that is to press over here on the right. If we slide out our properties panel, or press N, one of the options in this, if I just close them all down, is the 3D cursor. And in here we can actually access the X, Y, and Z of the 3D cursor. So we could slide this around and then move it to somewhere we wanted, but I never ever use this really. It's not really necessary. You can always move it more accurately with the snap menu. Actually, I totally forgot to switch on my screencast keys again, so that might be a little bit more helpful. And snap objects. So again, with these two up here, I could just press Shift D, Shift D. So you can very quickly, with snapping switched on, you can very quickly build up kind of a little house or whatever. To delete objects, you can just simply press delete if you have a delete key, and that'll bring up a little delete menu, or you can press X and that'll bring up the same thing if you don't have a delete key. Oh yeah. So you might some keyboards you might actually have two delete buttons. So if you've got a numpad, you're gonna have a little delete key down here, but this is not the one we're looking for. This one zooms up to your objects. So on mine I have the delete keys up here, but if you can't find the delete key, just press X. Because X is kind of the main way to do it. Oop. And that so that's just in object mode. If I just quickly show you how that works in edit mode. So I'll switch over to edit mode, and at the moment I can select the polygon faces. So if I was just to press X now, this is why we'd always press X, because depending on what situation you're in, you're going to get a lot of different options for deleting. So in here I could press delete and delete just the face. So now I've got like an object opened up. But yeah, we're just going to stay in object mode for now anyway. And name and objects and so on, we can do that up in the outliner. Now if you're in the Minecraft file, these are already all named and stuff, so you can quickly go through them. But you could just double click on any one of their names and rename that to whatever you want. If you made adjustments to it, you could name it accordingly. Or you could press N to open your properties panel, and under item, which is a few down, you'll get an option to change the name there. So I'm just going to press T to close my toolbox there. So we can undo and redo in Blender, which is great because lots of mistakes will be made. So I think on the first day, I'll just check the preferences. So I'll just press Ctrl-Alt-U for the shortcut. And in the preferences, under File, I think. Yeah. So under File in the Blender User Preferences, we have Save Versions and Recent Files. No, that's not it. Undo. Haha. So, in the User Preferences under Editing, just here on your left, you'll see the undo. So that I think I told you is you can stick that up to 256 as the maximum. That's up to yourselves if you think you might need to go back that far. That will use a lot more memory though as you do more and more stuff. So let's say I'm going to Shift-D, copy that, and then Shift-R to repeat that. So we can Control-Z to undo, and we can go back all the way. Oh yeah. So our undo and redo, we can use the shortcuts, or it's accessible under Object at the bottom of the 3D view. We have undo and redo, but I normally always just use the shortcut. So that's not control. So Control Z is going to undo, and then Control Shift Z will redo. So you can tap that to your heart's content. And if we press Control Alt Z, that's going to bring up a list of all your actions that you can undo. So you'll see up here at the top corner I have a little eyeball. That means that's where we're looking at right now. So you can see I duplicated objects, I deleted the object that time, deselect, move the wooden planks. So you can scroll all the way down. There's add cone, add cylinder. So we could go all the way back to when I added that cone. And there it is there. So that's just straight back to where we've done that. So now you see the little eyeballs move down here to add cone. So you can just go through that list. Maybe you've made a huge mistake somewhere. There's where we added the monkey. So maybe when we added the monkey, that was the biggest mistake we ever made. Per Suzanne. So we can come back there and delete it or whatever. Yeah, so that's the undo history list. So yeah, just going to cover now linking our objects and parenting them, just to finish up. So just going to bring this wooden block over here. So I'm going to use my 3D cursor. So I'm going to select a block here on my grass, Shift S and cursor to selected. Then I'm going to select my block that I want to move, Shift S and selection to cursor. Just move it up one, and I'm just going to slide it over there. So I'll Shift D and then Shift R to repeat that. Just make like a little block. So I'm going to select this, hold Shift, select 3 more, hop into a top view. I'm going to duplicate these, move them somewhere about there, and then rotate them, still with snap and switched on, and just kind of move them into place. Do the same for this side, Shift D. Select all these, Shift D. Yeah. So to quickly select all those blocks, I would hop into, if I'm in a front view and I select those, I'm going to select all those blocks behind them. So I'll try, yeah. So if I press 3 for a right view, then I can press B and drag across and select all those blocks. And with all those selected, I'm going to press Shift D and just move them up 1, and then Shift R, Shift R. Not really, it's kind of a house, but it's not really a house. I mean, you could definitely spend your first night in there. That's probably a mansion for your first night. But yeah, I suppose I'll stick in a door while I'm here. So I'm just going to grab 2 blocks where a door would be and press X, delete them out. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to Control Z, bring that back, because I want to bring a door over here and get it perfectly lined up. So I'm going to select this, just any of these blocks here should do. Shift S, cursor to selected, and so now the cursor is there. Now I can delete these blocks, and the cursor remains there. So I'll go find a door. I think I have some of the doors hidden in different layers. So we talked about layers a bit last week. It's this little blocky area here. There's 20 layers altogether. Any block with a circle and a little sphere in it, grey sphere, means there's objects in it. So we can hold Shift and click on multiple layers to start displaying everything that's in them. So I'm just going to switch them all on there, and we'll see all the objects. And our doors are over here to the right. So just select any door there. And with that selected, I should be able to get it close enough over here. So Shift S to teleport it to the cursor. Nope, I made a mistake. I moved the cursor. Okay. So I don't think you can. You can't undo the 3D cursor movement. So I accidentally hit the wrong one. So now I've zoomed my cursor over to my door, which is not what I meant to do. Alright. So I'm just going to move my cursor to this one here. Cursor to selected. Go over again. Select the door. And Shift S, selection to cursor. And now the door should be somewhere in there, stuck in the middle there. So it's a little bit off now because it's not moving with the grid at all. So I'd hop into an orthographic view. Let's see, if I go to press 3 to go to my right view and press 9 to switch to opposite. Now this might be different for your scene, but with that we can move the door around a little bit more accurately. Because of smaller grid points, and it's not perfect, but it'll do for now. So if I just zoom way in there, I pressed Z there to go into wireframe, so I can perfectly see the little grid points. So with that I can just slide this up. Now it's not 100% perfect, but it's near enough. So I press C there to go back at a wireframe, that switches back to solid. So I'll just change that to material so we can see. So that will kind of do. The Minecraft door, are they out to the front? Or out to the push down? Yeah. So if I wanted to line that up proper, I'd hop into a top view, press Z to go into wireframe. Now I can see my door here. Now I can zoom in a little bit closer to make them grid blocks a little smaller, and I just slide that forward and back out of that view, and that should be close enough. So with a little door there. So let's say now we had this finished model and we want to be able to move it around, maybe rotate the whole thing or whatever. So at the moment it would be a bit mad to be trying to press B and select blocks and then press G. It works, but it's not the best way. So what we want to do is, we have a few different ways. We could join all these objects together so that they turn into one object. This will mean that we can't select each block like this. It'll all just be one giant block, I guess. So what I'll do is hop into right view will do for me, and with that I'll box select the entire house. So now I have all those blocks selected. I could just do a little test, just press G. Now I'm getting them all to move. So that's fine, so I'll right click and just throw that back where it was. So to join an object, I think it's just gonna go with the shortcut, which is better. So another shortcut for you is I think it is Control J. Yeah. So Control J, it's going to turn your object, everything you've selected is going to just join into one object. So now I can deselect that, and if I just click anywhere, I've got that entire thing selected. Now I selected, so I brought over a little bit of a flower, I think, by mistake. I think that's a flower. That is fine. So that little bit of a flower is connected to our house, which is great. Every house should have a flower. So yeah. Now I didn't actually mean to select the door as well, because what this has done now, because it's all one big object, we can't actually open our door. Now I'm just grabbing through to the floor there. If we were to go into edit mode now, this is where we can kind of access everything again, but it's not a way to animate things or whatever. So it would be kind of like if you're finished with your build and you know you're not going to make any more changes to that object, you press Control J to complete just turn it into one object. So this little flower here now, I should be able to disconnect this from those guys. So to do that, I would hop into edit mode. So now we've got access to all the little bits and bobs that we selected together. So I come over to this little flower that I did not mean to select, and I could do a box select around it. And then I think to separate P. So P is the shortcut for separating. Separating. So I press this, P, and now it gives me a few different options there. I can separate by what I've selected. I could separate by material or loose parts. So selection obviously is whatever is selected will be separated. So I click on that, and now this object is its own object again. Excuse me. So I can move around this house, and I can also move around this flower by itself. Yeah, the door is still selected there, but I'm not going to worry about that just now. Actually, I will worry about it. if I went into object mode, press A to select them all and P to separate by material, because the the door has a different material to the rest, that would actually deselect the door real quick. So now we have the house walls and the door. So the better way to select these objects, actually, if I Control-Alt-Z to open up my undo history, and I'm going to go all the way back to my join. So now I'm back to where these are all separate objects, everything. So the way to kind of properly connect them is to parent them. So parenting is a way to set up a hierarchy between objects so that one will control the other, or so on. So basically what it means is we could kind of build almost like a plate and have all these objects here connected to the plate. So when we move the plate around, the objects will move with it, but they can also move by themselves. So to do this, I'm going to bring in another new object. So up in our toolbox we have all our objects there. I'm actually going to close the toolbox and use the shortcut, since it seems to be a very shortcutty day. The shortcut for bringing in new objects is Shift A. That'll bring up your add object menu. So we have meshes, we have curves, so on, loads of crazy things. Armatures, they're skeletons for building characters and stuff. Yeah, lights, cameras, so on. What we're looking for right now is just an empty. So an empty is basically an object that won't render, you're not going to see it, it's just a single point in space, and we can connect things to it and so on. So we click on empty, and then we have a load of different types of empties. To be honest, it doesn't really matter which one you pick, but I'm just going to click on plain axes for now. And if I just slide this out, we just see what happened. So this is the empty that we've made. Press the delete key on the numpad to zoom into that. So it's just a little point in space, it doesn't do anything, it's just kind of hanging around and having a good time. So what we're going to do is we'll connect this, every single object here, to this point. And then all we're ever going to have to do is move this point around, and we should get the rest of them to move with it. So to do that, I think I'll hop into a top view. No, I won't. I'll hop into, yeah. So I'm into a right view. Now I just want to box select the entire objects there. And they're all selected. Now, to do a parenting operation, the way it works is we select the, I think it is, child object first, parent object last. Yeah. So first of all, we select all the objects that we want to be controlled by the other object. And lastly then, we select the object that's going to be in control of the whole lot. So with all those selected, I'll hold Shift and select my empty last. So now we've got the objects, and we've got this one selected last. You'll know which object is your last selected object because it's going to have a slightly different shade of color on it. Now I don't know, because of my theme, mine is kind of, these normal objects have got an orangey line around them, and my final object has got a kind of a brighter peach color. I'm not sure which way it is with yours. Parent, yeah. So to parent, The shortcut is Control P. You can do that, yeah, no problem. You didn't have any luck with your textures showing up. Alright, we'll be in contact and we'll try and get that sorted out. The mystery. So the shortcut for parenting is Control P. So when we do that, we get a set parent to dialog. Now if we selected object, I'll actually do that. If I select object, oh, that's fine. Right. So if we had, yeah, alright, that'll do. So just set object, Control P, object, and now you should see a bajillion, well, if you're copying mine, then you'll see all these little dotted lines will come flying down and connect up to this object here. These are called relationship lines, and they let you know that there's some kind of interaction between objects. So now you see, as I move my locator around, I have my entire object moving with it. So that's kind of the system we're going to use for building whatever we're going to build. I think it's going to be a submarine, but maybe a boat or something. It's entirely up to you guys as well. But what we would do is build like the big boat or submarine or whatever, and then select everything and connect it up to a little controller. So this, technically what you're looking at is a rig. It's an extremely basic rig, but it definitely is a rig. Yeah, so that's just a way to get them all to move together. Are there any questions there on anything we've done? I think we'll pretty much call it at that for today.